we're going to talk about the project to begin with. Before I get into talking about the prompt, which of course this is on CourseDen, so it's available to you anytime, we will talk about it, but a little bit of a preamble first. Why I build the semester the way that I do, okay? Because I'll try to be transparent with you guys. Typically, your final paper, which is what we just turned in, okay, it was due a couple days ago, would be the final thing you turn in for that semester. Like we would have a last class, which we're going to have here in a little bit, and then after that, you would turn in a final paper. Now there's good things about that approach. You would have more time with the paper, chief among them, right? For sure. The flip side though, because I was a student for like 10 years or whatever, I remember this vividly. The flip side of that is all of your final whatevers are due at that same time. So you would have had a final paper from me. You probably have a couple final exams that you have to study for. You may have another writing class or something. You have another paper, and it all comes to a head like in the same week, and you kind of want to explode. So my thinking was, and I started doing this a couple years ago, I would have your final paper due before that, and we'd have a final project, which, again, we're going to talk about. It's not like there's no work involved, but comparing this to something like a final paper, this is much more like a victory lap, is how I characterize it. I'm not saying you can just sleepwalk through it, but I am saying it's not going to be as big a deal, okay? That's my aim. Also, I'd make this point, because there are occasionally someone will say to me, you know, they'd rather have that time, that extra time, the paper be due a couple weeks from now. In my experience, I'd say 95% of the time, all that extra time for a student means is that's just longer that you can put the paper off. You know what I mean? Like, whatever work you were gonna do, you did most of it that last week regardless. Like, it's not so I don't know that the extra time actually helps, but that's a different discussion. All right, final project. It'll be due the 3rd of December, so we got a little while. I want to remind you here though. Hi there. I want to remind you here, like I talked about just before class, we do have Thanksgiving break in between now and then. And again, I don't know your life. I imagine most of us won't get a lot of work done over that break. So plan accordingly. Like whatever you decide to do, we do have a good bit of time. You might have a little less time than you're envisioning right now because of that break. Just know that, right? Length, I say at least 10 minutes. You know, I can give or take there, but 10 minutes I think is a pretty good benchmark. Yes?
And so do we have to record ourselves for 10 minutes?
We're gonna talk about that.
Okay.
All right, so, but what I want to say real quick, 10 minutes goes a lot faster than you think it does. It does. You'd be surprised. But anyway, it's 5% of your final grade. So again, it's not nothing, but it's not nearly as weighty as one of the papers, which 25%, something like that. So it's significant, but it's not so much that it'll crush you. Again, the whole aim with this final project is I want you to still do some work, still participate in the kind of conversation we've had over the course of the semester, but with a good deal of pressure taken off. That's my hope. So what is the assignment? As always, there's a lot of words here. I'm not going to read at you, but basically, I want you to choose a text. This could be a movie, a show. I've had people write about albums before, which is pretty cool. Video game, I've had a couple people do. I had one guy, I used to have you guys do presentations along with this. It was a much bigger thing. One guy never turned in a paper, which was odd, but he gave me, honestly, one of the best presentations I've ever seen about Hulk Hogan. Guy clearly was a fan, but like really dove in, really like had a lot of thoughts about it. It was really cool. So anyway, it can be kind of anything, because again, I think we're all, at least I hope I'm not dispelling any illusions, we understand Hulk Hogan's a character, right? Like he's not a real person, that guy. Hi there. Anyway, my point is, any text, basically, that you want, that somehow participates in the conversations we've had this semester around Die Hard, Slaughterhouse 5, Fairchild. The other way I talk about this, the other way you can think about it, you sort of recommend a text to me that I might be able to use in a future iteration of this class. Like, hey, I know we watched Die Hard, but you should check this out because it's doing this and this, you know, like that kind of thing could be another way to approach this project, okay? I mentioned the 90s in here. I would like it to be somewhat contemporary. So like I kind of give you 1990 as a cutoff. I will always make exceptions. I'd simply ask that you ask, you know, hit me up in an email, like I'm thinking about this movie, this show, whatever, you know, what do you think? And we can have that conversation. But generally speaking, I'd like it to be contemporary. And I know at this point, 90s isn't even really contemporary, but there's that. What might the project look like? Okay, so the low bar I'm gonna give you is a podcast. 10 minutes-ish of you talking at me about your text, what it is, and then of course, more importantly, why you think it would work well. So you can think about, like any of the classes we had, we talked about Die Hard. We didn't just talk about the movie, we did do that, but we looked at specific scenes. We talked about details. You could do a little bit, I would basically ask that you do a little bit of that work on your own. When this character says this, or when you see this in the background, or you know, like any of that same kind of work, I would ask you to try to do some of that with your deal. That's the low bar, okay? Somewhere above that bar would be, I give you one example. I wouldn't mind you being creative if you wanted to, if you had a little bit of time, which we do. The example I give you, if I were a student in a class like this, and I had to do a project like this, and I felt like I had enough time, I would probably get a couple of my idiot friends together, and we would shoot like a couple scenes from the movie. And then in the middle of the scene, I'm thinking of the scene in particular, we're gonna watch it next time, it's a lot of fun. But in the middle of that scene, you know, we might break out a character and kind of look at the camera and talk about some of the things going on and like what it means or how we're gonna read it. Do you see what I'm saying? Like that would be my kind of creative take on the project. You don't have to do that, I'm telling you, you don't have to do that. But I will put it to you like this. A professor said this to me a long time ago. He gave me an Olympic diving metaphor, and I understand that's strange because Olympic diving, but roll with me for a second. He made the point that, because he was talking about papers, but it applies here. He made the point, if you're the kind that you attempt like 3 flips and a twist and whatever else, you know, you do all that stuff, and then when you hit the water, like you kind of make a splash, it's not perfect. We're gonna give you more leeway because you tried all that stuff. You see what I'm saying? Versus if you get on that high dive and you come back with a cannonball, it may be great, that cannonball, but what were you attempting, right? The score can only be so high based upon the level of difficulty, I guess, is the metaphor. So I'd put it to you that way. People do great on this assignment, just to be clear, with the podcast. That's fine. But I'm just telling you, if you have a thought or if you have a cool notion of something you might try to do, you probably do better. Like that's how these things go. 2 more notes very quickly. And this might kind of start to answer your question from a moment ago. Whatever you decide to do, most of your brain power should be spent on what text am I going to choose, how am I going to talk about it, what am I going to say. Yes, but somewhere in there you do have to make considerations for how am I going to record this and submit it. And with that in mind, I wanted to let you know, if you only record audio, which you can do, but that's weirdly harder in 2021. Like, I don't know if you've ever tried to record just audio on your phone or something. It's not awesome.
Yeah, the best you can do is basically record a video and then just...
Yeah, so it's not, but even that is video. Like, so But my point is, audio, like an audio file, is small enough, that'll upload to Coursera. That's fine, if you can figure that out. If you record video, which most of you will do because that is what you're most affiliated with, you know how to do, you will have to first upload it to YouTube. Then copy and paste the link of that video into a document. Then you can upload the document to Coursera, okay? Now that's a consideration for a little bit down the road, but I just want to put that in front of you, because Coursera, she's old, she can't handle a video. She can't do it. That's why all my stuff is on YouTube and then I post it to Coursera. So just want that, that's got to be some part of your process, whatever you decide to do, right? And we'll talk more about that later, but again, I just want to put that in front of you. Is there anything else? No, not really. Any other questions about this?
You could just put it on Turnitin.
I still don't think it would work. Turnitin will only take documents also. It won't take, I don't think it will take video. I'd be surprised. Okay, let's turn on some lights. That one do it? Sweet. All right. Here's what we're gonna do now. First, I want to remind you, or perhaps inform you, that you had homework due today. Now, I'm not super happy that I had to do that, but that's how the syllabus worked out. It's a discussion board post. It's not super involved, but you can do it before next time. It's not a big deal. All that discussion board post is what we're about to do right now. So if you haven't done it yet, you can take this as a start. And if you have done it, well then this is just a continuation. But what I want to do, brainstorm a little bit. Anytime we start something new, that's what this is, we just turned in a paper, right? Anytime we start something new, I just want to try to get that new train rolling, okay? So you have to pick a text. That's where you got to start. Whatever you do after that, you got to do this first. And I thought I'd give you guys a couple examples, and then hopefully you can come up with a few for us as well. I should say, again, the way I used to do this, it wasn't a project, it was your final paper. So instead of all of us writing about Die Hard, you would all pick your own text and you'd write a paper about it. That goes really well for some people and really badly for others, which is why I stopped doing it. But that is to say, I still remember a couple really good papers I had. I had one about Shrek that a student wrote for me years ago. I would assume most of you have seen this movie at some point. There's a lot going on in that movie about chivalry and knights. Shrek is absolutely an anti-hero, right? Kind of in a similar way to McClane in some ways that we talk, right? Fiona, when she takes her true form, she's an ogre? Wow. It's doing a whole lot with fairy tales, but also the expectations that we still have that apparently are really antiquated, right? They're that old. That was a really cool paper she wrote me. I had another paper in a different class. A student wrote about a show called Sons of Anarchy, which I've never seen, but it's guys on motorcycles. But she made the point to me that there's a lot of Hamlet in the show, actually. So we actually had quite a few conversations because I don't know anything about Sons of Anarchy, but I know a whole lot about Shakespeare. But she ended up writing me a really cool paper about that. And again, just to be clear, you're not writing papers here, right? I don't do it that way anymore. But if you were to come at me with a podcast or some other kind of project and just hey, the conversations we've had this semester about these different texts, here's another one, movie, show, album, video game, I'm sure I'm leaving something out, book, I know nobody reads anymore, but those exist, any of that stuff. That you might do this for your project. You guys got anything kicking around right now?
Man, I spent all weekend working on studying for a math test.
Yeah.
I'm completely...
Okay, that's fine. Well, somebody, look, there's no movies that feel similar to Die Hard to you, or a show, or again, I say video game just because it's 2021. I assume many of you do that in some regard. Yeah.
I'm thinking like compared to Die Hard, maybe like Home Alone, like the first two movies.
Years ago, I had a student try to write me a paper about Home Alone. You'd have to pick one. I don't think you could do both, right? Because it's just too much. But yeah, especially the first one. Did we have this conversation? We may have talked about this when we talked about whether or not Home Alone and Die Hard is a Christmas movie, right? Like, but yeah, like he's home alone, obviously. But what does that mean? Like early in the movie, he tells himself he's the man of the house. He walks around with a BB gun. What does he do when he finds out those guys are going to rob the place? Does he call the cops? No. He sets like a bunch of juvenile traps, like a bunch of cartoonish traps. But it's still this idea that he is the oldest male in the house, and it's his job to protect it. And that's what he does. In the real world, he'd be dead or something, right? Like it doesn't work like it does in the movie. Or if he does set those traps, those guys would be dead. The first paint can that comes down a set of stairs is taking your fucking head off. Like it's not. But it's all cartoon. It's kiddie. It's fun, you know, haha. But what stereotypes are we maybe reinforcing, or are we seeing in play? There's a lot. My point. There's a lot going on in Home Alone that I think, specifically because it's the kind of movie it is, and because you all watch it when you were young. I watched it when I was young. I looked it up. Was it come out in 1990 or something? Something. I was the target market. So like, but you see it when you're that young. You don't see all this other stuff that is very clearly going on in the movie. So the short answer is, yeah, that would work. That would absolutely work, for sure. Great. Other ideas? Movie, show, video game, album, book. Oh, I had a great paper one time. Somebody wrote me about Young Thug. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this person's work. Really good paper. She knew too much about him. I had to ask her to walk it back so she could focus, because she was like exploding with information about this guy. I was like, "Oh, told me," and then, but yeah, that was a really good paper too. Anyway, sorry. Can't think of anything, huh? Go ahead.
I'm just thinking how I'm gonna do this because I don't have any video editing software
You don't need any.
or have any idea how I'm gonna do this.
We'll talk about the technical side later. We're just speaking text right now. That's all this.
I remember last time I took your class A, I put in Victor Victoria from it, and I know that was a while ago. That was about a year ago.
From what? What's this person in?
What?
Victor Victoria? Who is this? I don't remember.
No, it's a film. Well, no, it's a film, and
It's called Victor Victoria?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. What's it about?
Basically, it's the 1930s in France, and
Okay.
and of course, like pretty much everywhere else in the world during the 1930s, it's pretty shit.
Yeah, well, especially in France.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and basically everyone is dealing with the fact that there's a Great Depression on and all that.
Yeah.
And basically people are just trying to find work and one of the people trying to find work is Victoria,
Right.
who's a brilliant singer, and she's played by Julie Andrews, and
Oh, so she has to disguise as a man.
Yeah.
With a name. Okay. Mary Poppins, huh? Okay.
yeah.
That's interesting. I've never even heard of it. I mean, I don't know a whole lot about Julie Andrews, but okay.
I made it think about it last time I was in here. Again, that was a long time
That was
ago.
like a year. Yeah, it's been a minute. Okay. No, I don't mind it. Now for any, I'll go ahead and give you one, and then I want to come back to you because you had one too. There's like a possible pejorative on this, and I don't mean it that way at all. That I always get people that want to write about Mulan too. Like any text with like some element of gender bending, or like this is what it should be versus this is what we're going to do now. Like for sure would work because now we're considering those same stereotypes, those same expectations. The fact that this person in the 30s mind, but this person, I guess, felt like they, kind of like Mulan, felt like they had to perform this masculinity so that they would be accepted in a certain sphere. But of course, here again, that kind of says something about masculinity all on its own, the fact that it could be performed by this person, right? But yeah, that would work. What'd you have back there?
I was thinking like those the sons of anarchy, the show, probably like Game of Thrones.
Somebody brought that up in my last class. I've only ever seen like the last 2 episodes because my wife wanted me to watch them with her. It would work. The big thing with that, first of all, any show, like 2-ish episodes max. But especially those, because they're like an hour and a half a piece or something. They're long.
Well, actually, they were usually just an hour. But
Okay. Well, so 2 would be 2 hours. That's a movie. Like that's enough. But also with those in particular, there's so many characters. You would have to really pare down your focus. Like I'm only gonna talk about these 2 or 3 people in like these 2 or 3 scenes, you know, because otherwise there's just too much. There's too much to talk about. But yeah, like the point the student last class made was I don't know anybody's name, and I'm not gonna try. But there's a blonde woman who's really into dragons, who's like a powerful figure. And she thought it was interesting that this woman was a powerful figure, right? Because it's set in the Middle Ages and it's fantasy, and that's feels pretty atypical, right? To have, it's like, sure, for sure. Well, it's kind of interesting too, like that you have that figure who's atypical in that setting, sort of in that position. But I think part of the commentary might be as well that that's also atypical still. Like it's remarkable. And by the way, all remarkable means is it's worthy of remark. Like it's worth noticing. It's worth noticing even in 2021 when you have a figure like that. Like it strikes you as like, oh shit, she's in charge. Like it's weird. Well, that says something about us too, right? That you could have something that's weird for the Middle Ages still be weird in 2020, right? Like that should strike us as odd. That we're in that one way maybe kind of like the Middle Ages, right? That might suggest something. For sure. Cool. Other texts. I just want to get some up here.
I was thinking for mine. One of the Lord of the Rings books or movies because there's a lot. There's a lot of stuff with a lot of the if you don't notice a lot of the main characters like Aragorn is supposed to be like the best of men, like the paragon of what masculinity is supposed to be. And if you look at it, it's not like the standard. It's not like the standard sort of is. He shows like a lot of compassion and like love for his fellow men and stuff, and that.
So 2 things real quick. Number 1, I don't know about the books just because they're older. They're from the 40s. They're old.
50s.
Okay, yeah, I don't know. He was writing them forever, so I couldn't quite remember. He was buddied with C.S. Lewis, and they basically created the fantasy genre together. But the books are probably too old, right? The movies are not for this assignment. But because too, sort of related to a little bit what we're saying about Game of Thrones, these are fantasy, like, in terms of the genre, so I think they harken back again to some of the Middle Ages ideas, like chivalry, and back then the definition of masculinity would have been a little bit different, would have been depended much more upon being like a camaraderie sort of mindset for sure. But again, you can think about sort of how that very, very old idea of masculinity gets translated, gets updated, or what have you, right? And I mean, any of the Hobbit characters, they're like friends, but it's like, man, they're really good friends. Like, I don't have any friends like that. Those too close. Like,
Well, then again, you've never been. Well, then again, with your friends, you've never been on a quest to save the world. So
you don't know that, but no, that's fair. But yeah, no, my point is, also like Game of Thrones, though, there's a ton of characters, and again, I think you would want to pare it down. Like, I'm going to talk about one of the movies. Potentially.
And one of the characters.
One or two, you know, like max 3. You could maybe do 3, but any more than that, yeah. Now you're just gonna laundry list people, and it's gonna be too much, right? But for sure, you could do that. Yeah. Other ideas? Yeah, go ahead.
The movie Brave.
What is it?
The movie Brave, like
Brave.
Oh.
I only know about this because my son played the game for a little bit. Yeah. Well, you tell us about it. I've been talking a lot. Well, why?
So I was thinking like along with you launch, you had to pretty much think about like societal norms for what it was to be a woman at that time in her movie.
Yeah.
Her mom wanted her to be married, but she'd rather be independent and like be queen on her own instead of like getting married and having to deal with that.
Yeah. Okay. There's more to it. I assume just based off the game a little bit my son was playing, but yeah. Well, and she is, right? Like, she's capable with a bow, and she's very capable, I guess is the word really you'd arrive at. Similar to Mulan. She doesn't pretend to be a man in that movie, does she? But she doesn't want to sort of give in to this feminine expectation that, like, this is all you can do, so it's more... And she, like, saves people or something, right?
Yeah, she turns her mom into a bear.
She turns her mom into a bear?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I don't know what to do with that. I mean, granted, I haven't seen the movie, but okay. Okay.
Speak to your Pixar. I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's okay. But no, I mean, yeah, that sounds like that would work for sure. For sure. Okay. One or two more. Humor me. Yes.
I don't know if you've seen it, but like The Princess Bride.
Long time, but I have seen it. I have seen it. Yeah. What about it?
Just with like, okay, so like the prince hires the 3 like hitmen, I guess you would say, but to like kidnap and kill the princess.
Yeah.
So that he is able to go to war with a country that he really wants like territory from. And I
Oh.
feel like that could tie in with like how men are really drawn to war and also power over other people.
Well, and he, yeah, 'cause I don't remember that. I've seen the movie. It was a long time ago. But is he also? I'm asking. Is he also trying to kind of set up a situation where he could be the hero?
Oh yeah, definitely. Where he's like trying to find her and like
Yeah.
her and
Yeah.
like it's like appearances, like because he's
Yeah.
supposed to be like this noble person, but he's actually not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe he is and he isn't, right? Because he does save her, right? And he does do good things. I'm asking.
He wants to like kill her the whole time because he really wants that war really bad.
He wants to kill her?
Yeah.
Oh. Well,
Which
that's
is why it's like a flip on what
Sure.
you think of a prince.
for sure. Well, no, again, it's similar to Shrek in some ways, right? Like Shrek is the ogre, so he should be but this guy seems to be more of the actual ogre. That's interesting, and it kind of has you thinking about like, because he knows what the narrative is. It sounds like, and he's trying to use that for this whole other. He's kind of like Hans, I guess. This whole other ulterior motive.
Basically, characters that know they're in a quote-unquote story.
Yeah. Well, again, Princess Bride kind of plays with that some, but you kind of wonder. I guess it's too. Hans is the bad guy, but he's presented as who is the hero in Princess Bride? Then, if it's not, I'm asking.
It's okay, so like Wesley, like he's like masquerading as like the Dread Pirate Robert, so he looks like he's a bad guy, but he's actually the savior of the whole situation.
Okay.
which is why it's-
I got you. Yeah. And do you have something to say about it?
No.
Okay, I'll hold it for just 1 second. So in this one way, it's a lot like Die Hard because the bad guy and the hero, you could kind of flip if you wanted, and again, it is about appearances. You're absolutely right. Now I remember he wears a mask,
Mhm.
and I do one of the few things I remember from the film, other than Manny Patinkin telling that guy, "You come up for the perimeter," right? But when he says "as you wish" when he falls down the mountain or whatever hill, she knows him not from his face because he's just wearing on his
I know,
the
you
top
should
of
be
his
able to see it,
yeah, but she doesn't recognize that, so she's not about appearances, I guess would be one of the, but it's this connection they have from like long ago, and it's what they said to each other that matters, which is interesting. But yeah, why does he dress like a pirate? Why does he pretend to be one?
He took it over.
The pirate life?
Yeah, like the legacy of the pirate.
Does it ever go into like, because I would just assume he does that because it affords him certain opportunities, or like can he?
So his ship was like wrecked at sea.
Okay.
And they like took him on, but then the actual Dread Pirate Roberts was like, "You're cool, you can be my successor," and that was that. So
Okay.
he was afforded his life if he kept
Yeah, and to be in charge now, he can sail around and he can maybe get back to just okay. But again, he's just like Die Hard. He's taking advantage of the narrative too, right? Well, if I'm going to be this like king of the pirates or whatever, now I can go and exert the power that affords me to find this person or whatever. So it's about appearances and taking advantage of them and like wielding that. You have the one guy who should be the hero, who turns out an asshole. You have the other guy who looks like a villain, but he's the good guy. So we're absolutely saying appearances are deceptive, and we're saying something else about what really matters, I guess. Yeah, for sure.
It's amazing, I can't think of anything.
So don't worry, that's what this is about. We're doing the work. You had something, Nicholas.
Yeah, wait.
Oh no.
I just had it.
I hate it when that happens.
No, wait.
Hold on, you take 1 second. If you stop thinking about it, it'll come to you. What you got, man?
I just had a question. So, like,
Okay.
if we're gonna do like an album, are we gonna do like talk about the entire song list, or just a few songs?
I would still, for the purposes of this, say 2 or 3 songs. You could, I mean, it depends on the album too. Like sometimes, the example I was thinking of, this girl wrote me a paper on an album by a band called Neutral Milk Hotel, which I don't even think they're a band anymore, but it was a concept album. Are you guys familiar with that? What this is? Like the whole album is an idea, and usually they tell some kind of story. The reason I tell you that is, even on an album like that, I would say stick to 2 or 3 songs. But if the album itself has like some kind of cohesive idea that it's about, that might be important for context. So I'm gonna give you guys a ridiculous example to illustrate my point. When I was your age, I was a fan of a band called the Mars Volta. Don't worry about it. But they're really big on concept albums, and their second album is called Francis the Mute. Here's the concept of the album. Their buddy, who had killed himself, this is real life, had killed himself years before, used to work as a repo man. He would repossess cars. In one of these cars, he found the diary of a guy who was clearly schizophrenic. And there were different characters in the diary. One of them was Francis the Mute, who like didn't speak, and they took to stand for the guy writing the diary. So the whole album is written from that guy's perspective. So it's fucking crazy. But that's that's context you would need to talk about any of those songs, right? Does that make sense? So with most albums, it's just, here's all the songs I wrote, and they don't necessarily have a unifying thing. So there's just an album, that's fine. But sometimes it's a concept album where all of them like tell a story, or they all have to do the same thing. That would be the context I would need, if that makes sense. Are you thinking of any album in particular?
So there's this one album by the singer named Melanie Martinez.
Uh-huh.
It's called K through 12, and it's like
Called K through 12?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's talking about like pretty
School?
much her character. She has this character that she goes by, like her name's Crybaby, and she's growing up.
This is a concept album. Yeah, you would need to mention this.
So it was she pretty much talks about things that's going on in society that she learned while being in school, like how
Yeah.
girls got treated differently than the guys do.
Okay. Yeah, so that would be the context, but then you'd give me all that, and then you'd say, all right, so these 2 songs I'm going to talk about or whatever, and that would get you more specific. But yeah, in the same way, if you were going to talk to me about a show, 24. I don't know if I've never watched it, but it looks like it would apply to this class. You'd first tell me what the show is about, right? Kiefer Sutherland's character only has 24 hours, always, to save people. He's going to shoot a bunch of folks. There's going to be explosions. Anyway, the episode I'm interested in, and then you dive into, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's absolutely a concept album, so you'd have to give me the context first. Yes?
I was thinking, you think the Mandalorian would be perfect?
Yeah. Now I'm a little more familiar with that show. My son loves Star Wars. He watched all of it. I watched some of it with him. That one, again, you have to pick like an episode or two. Because those are longer, right? They're an hour each, I think, right? I think they're longer.
So. Probably 26 to 30 minutes, but.
Well, anyway, like, 2 episodes.
Either way.
Yeah, that show is doing a whole lot, especially with like the Western.
Oh yeah.
So you can think about that. I mean, you could also consider if you wanted to. You don't have to.
Thank you.
But Star Wars at this point is kind of a genre unto itself, like just because it's so big with like so many fans and backstory and books and everything. Yeah, but it's doing both of those. It's like Star Wars and the Western. So like the Mandalorian character is this gunslinger,
bounty
figure.
hunter, basically.
Yeah. Well, he is, but he's a gunslinger figure. He's the guy that like saunters into town, and he's kind of dark, like he's always in shadow for some damn reason.
Yeah.
And it's that character that we then examine, and I think it's interesting that he gets that baby, right? Like that.
Yeah.
That's a weird contour to that character to give him a baby that is taken care of, right? And from that moment on, the show gets pretty interesting. But yeah, you can think about what we're doing with that figure, or again, why we're representing this kind of guy in this kind of way, right? The other way I would put it, and I forgot to say this at the start, whatever you decide to do, whatever it is, on some level, you're also thinking about what makes my text unique, okay? So with Die Hard, for instance, there's a lot of stuff that a lot of action movies have. Guns and explosions and people screaming, and, we got all that stuff. The one-liners, that's all standard. What makes Die Hard unique is the fact that he's an everyman. It's the kind of villain Hans is. It's the kind of bait and switch with what you think Hans is there for and you find out it's something else. Like, there's unique aspects to the text that are usually more worth talking about. You see what I'm saying? So those are usually the best opportunities you have for analysis. And that goes for any text you might pick. But in that case, it's the weird Western stuff married to the space stuff, and the baby. What the fuck is the baby about? That's pretty unique. You're not going to see that in a lot of other texts, if that makes sense. Any others? We can entertain real quick. No video games. I'm surprised by that. My first class had a lot. It's quite all right.
What video games did they have in mind?
They said GTA and Metroid and forgetting another one now. They had a couple. Anyway. All right, so this is by no means obviously an exhaustive list. I just wanted to try to kickstart a little bit of what we're going to be working on for the rest of the semester. Bear in mind too, discussion board post that I'd like you to make. You can use something you came up with today. You can use something else. It's totally up to you. But it'd be the same kind of thing. What are you thinking about? What is it? And then of course the all important why. Why would it work? Yes.
Wait, Mr. Tippett, I almost forgot the last one. Would The Shining work?
I mean, it would in the way that it's a dad losing his mind. It's also, I think, from like 1979, so that's really old when we think about. I'm on the fence about it. Thematically, it would work. Is really your question. I don't know if I'm gonna let you guys dip into the 70s or not. That might be too old for our purposes. But yeah, movie like that. Okay. Last thing I want to talk about. Here we got time. Okay. So, you've turned in your papers, at least hopefully, because they were due. About that. The other thing having you turn them in so early affords us is what I'm about to talk to you about. Now, I guess I'll start it like this. There's no good way to start this conversation. If you're the sort of person that whatever work you've done on it, you're happy enough with it, and mostly you're just happy to have it behind you, that is completely fine. I respect that position entirely, okay? You're done with it. You don't have to worry about it anymore. It's back there. Cool. However, I will also extend the opportunity if you're the sort of person who feels like you could do some more work on it, you're glad it's done, but you think it could be better, I'm going to allow you to work on it some more this week. You don't have to. You don't have to. Here's what it looks like, okay? If you want to let it ride with what you turned in, that's cool. Do that. You say nothing. At some point I will grade it, and you're good. You're done. If you want to work on it some more, with a little bit of space, and what I mean by that is, ideally you had it done by Friday, because that's when it was due. You turned it in. You've had all weekend. You have a little bit of space from it. When we talk about editing something, the reason that you struggle is you have no space. You're still in it. So you miss everything. When you get away from it, you say, oh, you can see more of the issues. If you want to work on it some more, you'd have to email me to let me know, because I have to delete your original submission. You can't upload twice to turn it in. It won't let you do that. So that would be the decision you would have to make. Is I would say sometime in the next 48 hours, you'd have to you'd have to email me and say, yeah, I want to take another swing. Could you delete my submission? I would do that. And then you'd be free to, by this Friday at midnight, submit another go at it if you want. But again, you do not have to, right? If you don't want to mess with it at all, don't email me, don't say anything, and just, again, I will get to it when I'm able to get to it, and I'll grade it, and it's behind you. I do think most of the time, the little bit of a sales pitch I'm going to give you for why I would recommend to take another swing at it is this. Whatever your process looked like, usually it's some version of, I'm going to work on it here and there, but then the week that it's due, I'm going to really start working on it. And maybe even the night that it's due, I'm going to really, really start working on it. That's how it goes. I was a student for a long time. I get it. The problem with that is that you usually screw something up when you're that kind of constrained. Everybody does. But you got a thing, and it's made, and it's done. But now that exists, if you take more time with that, you're able to see those problems, you might fill in some holes, what have you. You can make the thing better. That's the theory anyway. That's how revision works. But again, you do not have to. I want to impress that upon you. But if you'd like to take another shot at it, it would be due this Friday at midnight, turn it in, same place. You just got to email me first, because I have to delete that original submission. Are there any questions about anything we talked about today? Any questions at all? Okay. Next time, what we're going to do, don't forget about the discussion board. I do think it'll help you guys. We started a pretty good list here today, but you guys will usually come up with something else when you get away from this class. Also, you'll be able to read other people's, and you'll be surprised like what that will spark within you. You'll very rarely use other people's suggestions, but you'll read one thing, you'll be like, oh, that reminds me of this thing, and like all of a sudden that's your project. So I do think this homework in particular is valuable, right? Next time you also have a proposal due. That's just you telling me what you think you want to use for the project. So it's like a more developed discussion post. You just turn that one into me though on CourseDen. Oh, there's something else I wanted to say. Oh no. It's not going to come to me. Oh well. Anyway, yeah, that's all I got. I'll see you guys on Wednesday. Thank you.